It is time to review the Merida Big Nine 10K. Their top-of-the-line racing hardtail that comes kitted out with all the bells and whistles. We've got the SID SL front fork, we've got Reynolds carbon wheels, we've got the latest SRAM T-type drivetrain, UDH hanger, and everything that needs to be part of a top-of-the-line bike. But the question is it worth the money? Is it as good as it promises to be? And of course, I want to know, how does it handle for bikepacking adventures, for shredding your home trails, and for racing mountain bike races? So I've ridden this bike across the Rockies bikepacking style. I've paddled it up and down the coolest trails on La Palma Island and enjoyed it on the home trails here in Girona to let you know if this is going to be your next bike, the one you want. And I'm going to tell you what I love about the bike and what I would change. So let's jump straight into it. First, let's look into the main changes to its predecessor and what Merida says this bike can do. One of the key features is you've got a steeper C-tube angle now, which promises more control on the front of the bike on the really steep climbs. In contrary to that, you've got a lower front angle here, which promises more control on even the steepest and fastest descents. And third, the most obvious change is the way lower C-tube, 34 millimeters lower than before, promising more suspension in the rear, more control of the rear tire, and an overall more comfortable ride. So that's what Merida says. But if it holds up what it promises, I'm going to tell you in the review for the bikepacking, the racing, and the home trails. Let's start with the bikepacking. I tested the bike bikepacking style on the Trans Rockies Connector Trail for 30 days, including just steep, rugged descents on the Mormon Trail, wild climbs up Skyline Drive, or long flats through the desert in the San Rafael Swell to give it a proper test. The overall system weight came up to 30, sometimes 35 kilos, depending on how much water I carried, stuff the bike had to handle on top of me sitting on it. And I gotta say, the bike handled it all beyond my expectations. And the first thing that really stood out is one of the things Merida promises with the lower C-tube angle. It was the improved traction and the more cush you feel even on rocky terrain with all the weight on the bike, climbing up the mountains and riding it down. And their second improvement of the lower head tube angle and the shorter stem with the longer top tube overall for more control in the descents. And we had some fast descents on that trip. Really worked. The bike kept stable with a shorter stem. Even the turny trails were so much fun, and the bike was super responsive the moment you try to steer it in any direction. You combine that with the lightweight Reynolds carbon wheels with a wide rim width, which by the way carried real nicely in loose sand, the racing tires from Maxxis on there, and the overall lightweight. And this bike was also flying in the flats, in the long sections across the desert or through the mountains. The one thing, however, I did change for the bikepacking part is I put on an even shorter stem to bring myself in a slightly more upright position, relax the shoulders a little more for the super long days, because the way it comes from the factory, I would say, for 30 days straight and long hours in the saddle, it might just be a tad too aggressive. And the second thing I recommend changing for long bikepacking adventures is switch from the racing tires to something a little more solid with a little more puncture resistance. I had to find that out the hard way myself halfway up a mountain. So you want to avoid that. And probably most importantly of all, the bike handled all the luggage real well. It did take a second of research to find the perfect back setup to carry all these things, especially with a slightly smaller frame triangle on this bike. But in the end, the Apogura Backcountry line full frame back was the perfect solution. On a large frame like mine, you could fit the large back. On a small frame like Annika's, you could still get the small one in there. So that was a perfect setup in the end. Let's find out how much it weighs in a large, ready to ride. 9.4 kilos, including pedals, and my personal saddle on it in a size large with the heavier tires. And now let's look at the bike, how it handles for racing without all the weight on it, when it can use the just over 9 kilos it comes in, what it's made for, a racing DNA. And up front, boy, this bike was fun. I got to shred it on the greatest climbs and wildest descent on La Palma Island, And with the setup that we're seeing here, the Reynolds carbon wheels, the Maxxis racing tires, and the geometry that's just made for steep climbs and fast descents, this bike offered all the fun you would hope from the top of the line Merida Big Nine. Once you put the pedal down, the power goes straight onto the trail and accelerates you forward. And flying down rocky descents or super fast descents, the bike offers so much control. On the one hand, through the head tube setup that we talked about. On the other hand, through the added traction and the suspension of the lower C tube that you're finding here, allowing for the C tube to just offer more flex when the bumps keep hitting. You can feel the lightweight when you want to PB those climbs, and you can really fully enjoy and just let loose and trust the bike when you're flying down the hills. And honestly, the way this bike comes straight out of the box, the only thing I would change for racing is to switch to a personal saddle preference. But otherwise, what else could you want on a bike other than a lightweight frame with a perfect geometry for racing, for climbing and for descending, with the new Type T drivetrain from SRAM, UDH hanger that is so impact resistant, tried that for sure, and of course the perfectly dialed in and functioning RockShox Sit SL with 100mm travel. This is just a racing dream come true. And that leaves us with number 3. The stuff that most of us do most of the time, the joy riding on the home trails. Obviously, this setup is very similar to my racing setup, but this has very quickly become my favorite bike for the kind of trails and terrain we got here around Girona. And the reasons for that? Pretty simple. The before mentioned low C tube that offers a little more suspension and great traction. The lightweight, if you really want to pump it up those climbs and tracks and set new PBs or just have a blast out there on the trails. The great control in the front if you just want to let it rip downhill. And of course the comfort for the long straights when you're putting the power into the pedals to go forward. So around Girona we got a lot of this loose rock on the trails. If you got that, you might want to consider switching to a slightly more grippy front tire, the way I did, to fly even faster through those turns. So overall, for your home trails, for your riding, for your training, this bike offers more fun than 3 boxes of chocolate. It is a fantastic bike with a great setup, and here is my top features once more summarized and the things I would probably change on the bike. The top features, I think they've become obvious by now. It's the overall great setup, the way the bike comes equipped from the factory. It is how well the steeper seat tube and the lower head tube angle work together perfectly, and the long top tube with the shorter stem. It's a modern geometry that allows for long traction on the steepest climb, more fun flying downhill, and just overall joyful and aggressive riding. And the other thing, obviously, is the new T-type drivetrain from SRAM that really, as they promise you, allows you to shift under more pressure. More pressure shifting means harder pedaling, longer riding fast, longer fun for sure. And it's the tiniest thing, but this new UDH hanger standard is just the best. Honestly, you can flip the bike to the side, you can crash, it doesn't bend, it doesn't twist, it is so much more stable. And so it makes for a more secure, more fun ride, especially when you're risking a little too much and tend to lose the rubber side down every once in a while. And that brings me to the thing I would change about the bike, which I literally can't find any, especially not for its intended purpose. And with that, it is time to decide who this bike is for and if it is for you. So if you can afford it, this is a top-of-the-line hardtail racing mountain bike. If you love climbing, if you love fun descending, if you love playful riding, jumping, berms, but also racing, this is the perfect bike for you. If you want to throw in some ultra bikepacking races and the odd bikepacking trip, then this bike is for you as well. If you are a pure bikepacker that uses mountain bikes for the terrain that you're riding, then I would probably take my money and buy the slightly bigger sister to the Big Nine 10K, the TR, the trail version with a longer suspension fork in the front and a slightly more relaxed geometry. But overall, I would say you can't go wrong with the Merida Big Nine 10K. It is fun. Thanks for watching the video, guys. If you liked it, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave your comments and questions about the bike and the video in the comment section below. And make sure to check back for more content coming up, or right now, watch our latest video about our fantastic ski touring and bikepacking adventure we had this winter in the Alps and the deepest snow. See you soon.